Hello everybody. Today we'll talk about how to mod in the gem engine. Specifically, we'll dive in the aspect of importing a model. This will be providing a basis of all the kinds model you will do importing in the meta world. This is an overlook of the basics. And what we have here today, an example file of a T62 made by the company DMS. Um, We'll start by looking from the overarching to the most specific thing. Uh, Containing of every model is a basis. The basis is basically a small file that does the coding for the entire thing to teach the game to know what to import. For instance, if you open up the properties and go into user define, you see this information. For now, type game entity doesn't matter a lot, and there's most of the models will even change it, so you can ignore it. The model shows where it will be exported after you press export. The animation indicate where to start, what's the name of the animation, what's the composition of it, or the selection set as shown here in uh, 3dx Max, what frames it started from, and what frames it end, and what's the speed of it. On the other information also contained here for extra additional animation, but for now we're not diving deep into it in a different video instead. Um, Starting from the top, we'll talk about how the game split between the turret and the body. For referencing purposes, there are also additional uh, pawns here. We call them pawn helpers. For instance, they are basically just a pawn where you can create them by going to create further metric, I think, wait, standard primitive, and to extend the primitive. Somewhere over here. Uh, Go into light. Yes, a dummy from also word or pawn. You can create these, and this stuff the purpose of showing the game what does what. For instance, here is an FX fire that we looked at the beginning of the game, looking at the turret. FX fire show where the game create the firing animation, the firing effects, or is it also called as foresight one? Uh, Also, this is an emit point, allowing the game to know where to climb onto the vehicle. There's also these boxes, which are just like the dummy box I showed before. Does the effect of placing the unit on top of these boxes, just like as you see in game, the sitting on the back of the tank. Uh, Looking further into this unit, you can see that as it's split into two distinct positions, the body is the overarching of the model. The body goes down into the body volume, which has the properties of volume. Um, there's also the engine, which has the property of engine. The background, this is specific to contrams only, where it creates an your emblem onto the vehicle. The effects fire create the fire smoke coming up on top there. The FX light is the light, the shot is the shot, and additional FX just to show for the effects. Apart from that, there's also the differences between the wheel and the non-wheel. So for instance, the wheel only serves as a volume, an animated one, but a poly itself doesn't do anything, and it's just there for visual representation. Um, Going high into the wheels itself, you can see that it's split into two. Usually you don't have to do this, but EMS often prefers to do this to differentiate to be easier. For instance, the wheel slabs, as you can see here, um, contain the wheels itself, and we only will be talking about one of them. The wheel itself, the FX trace on top of it, the suspension, which is a point that allows the game to dynamically change it during the gameplay, as you can see whenever it clamps. This is somewhat of a new feature, but we have been utilizing it on some of our Men of War model as well. Um, we'll, Apart from that, I think that's enough for the bottom half of the body. We'll talk about the top, and then we'll go over to the animations. The top of it, we have the engine. You can see the engine here. The turret, I meant, didn't name it engine. The turret itself has the gun, the manlet, the hatches, machine gun turret, the machine gun rod, which allows for several differences animations. For instance, the machine gun rod allows the game to rotate it uh, up and down. The the turret machine gun here allows the game to rotate left and right, and the hatches allow the game to rotate up and down. This is why you should split this model apart from the actual turret model, so that you could easily animate them and you could allow the game to perform its own transformation of these models. Aside from that, you could should also split the gun and the mallet from the turret model itself, because the gun and the mallet does different things. The gun allows Splitting up the gun allows the game to point it back and forward, like in when a gun fires, and the mallet allows the game to turn it down and up. Just keep that in mind, and you should be able to utilize it when it comes to your own model. Um, Aside from that, there's not much changes compared to the actual model, and that should just be what you're paying attention to. We'll be talking to the about the animation right now. There are several parts in animation, and as you can see, we'll give an example of how you can export an animation right now. For instance, let's take the animation of the model. You can see that there's an animation already embedded in this file, which you can actually find in your example files inside your CTA installation. You can see that as the game does this, you can uh, know, for instance, in this situation, 0 to 51 does the animation of the basis, which is located here. You can see star by 0 to 51 is 75 speed, which means that the game showed star simulation at the start of 0 to 51, so right here. And the selection set of it, if you see it, it said it was body. So if you go into the selection set right here, you can see that the body is located here. And when you can go to the body, you can see that it's added with the body itself, this model. So after you configure that, adding the selection set, creating the animation, you just simply go to export it out. Press MDL, because that's the type of model that we have. Call it anything. This part, it doesn't matter. And export it as an animation. This is where it will be located. Change it to somewhere that you will be putting it in. For instance, in my case, I don't have a D folder. I put it in C. Add mass animation. If you had animation, if you put it and you don't have animation, the game wouldn't complain about it. You can see we're triangulating it. If you see these issues, it's usually just the model itself. We'll talk about fixing it in a different video, but for now you can ignore them. So we finished the exporting. We'll go into the downloads folder. Sorry, go to the C folder. Okay. C folder, go to the game, which is right here, and see an entity vehicle time medium T62, which is exactly how we put it in this model location. It has conveniently created a folder for you. So you just need to go here. We'll see your T62 have been configured. And we'll talk about modifying the depth in a different video. But for now, that's how you could export a model into the game, especially a vehicle model. Thank you for listening today, and I hope to see you forward in a different video. Goodbye.